All right, so today we are going deep on weight loss. We've got this article from Medical News Today called 10 Tips for Successful Weight Loss. And I think this will be a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, definitely.
What I thought was really cool about it is it
Mhm.
it doesn't just stay surface level. It really goes into some detail on stuff like, the psychology behind why we do the things we do when it comes to our eating habits. It also gets to like the actual details about portion control and
Yeah.
even things like, if you have like an injury or something, like
Yeah.
how do you stay on track with your weight loss goals?
Yeah, and that's what makes it stand out to me, right? Like, it's not a fad diet. It's really about how do you, like, change your lifestyle for the long haul.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And speaking of long-term health, the
Mm.
article really kicks off by underscoring how excess weight is,
Yeah.
related to some serious health problems like heart disease and diabetes. So it's good to see, I mean, everybody knows this, but
Yep.
it's good to see it right up front, like, hey, this is an important topic. Let's
Yeah.
let's dive into it.
Yeah.
So, why don't we jump into those 10 tips? The first one, it really focuses on what we all know but probably don't all practice, which is eating. Varied,
Yeah.
colorful, nutritionally dense foods.
Of course.
So that means lots of them. Fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, swapping out those processed snacks for whole grains.
Right. And I think what's interesting about this is it sounds so simple, right?
Yeah.
Like, eat fruits and vegetables.
Right.
But then how often are we reaching for a bag of chips instead of the apple?
Right.
So
Exactly.
I think it's interesting that this article also goes into, like, why. Why do we do that? Why
Yeah.
do we gravitate towards, the bag of chips instead of the apple?
Yeah, and I like that they acknowledge that. It's not always easy to make those healthier choices.
Right.
So tip number 2 is keeping a food and weight diary. Some people might think, oh, that's kind of a drag.
Yeah.
But the article makes a good case for its psychological benefits.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's real value in tracking, especially when it comes to something
Mm.
as personal as weight loss, and it can be emotional. But by tracking, we really start to build self-awareness. We start to spot patterns in our behavior, and we recognize those little victories.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really good point. Tip number 3 is all about physical activity and exercise. Now, again, this isn't rocket science, but what I like about this is they say just start small,
Yeah.
which is good because I think a lot of people
Yeah.
get really intimidated, especially if they haven't been working out.
Yeah. Going to the gym can be really daunting
Yeah.
for some people.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's why I always say it's more important to find an activity you enjoy
Mm-hmm.
than it is to worry about the intensity level.
Right.
Because if you hate your workout, you're not going to do it.
Absolutely. And now here's where I think things get a little bit more interesting. Eliminate liquid calories.
Mhm.
I think this one really flies under the radar for a lot of
Oh,
people.
absolutely. Like, big time.
It's
It's one of those hidden culprits. You've got your sugary drinks,
right.
fancy coffees, those smoothies that appear healthy.
Right. Yeah.
Just packed with calories
Yeah.
and no nutritional value.
Yeah. It's crazy how, you could be doing everything else right,
Right.
but then
Just totally sabotage it with
Yeah.
overdrinking.
And then tip number 5, measuring servings and controlling portions. I will admit sometimes I just eyeball it,
Oh, yeah.
but they're big on being precise in this article.
And you know what? It's so important, especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
And I love how they provide, like, visual cues using everyday objects
Oh, yeah.
so you can estimate portion sizes.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have like measuring cups and spoons.
Yeah, exactly.
So tip number 6 takes us to mindful eating. Could you explain what mindful eating is all about?
Sure. So it's really about being present with your food, savoring each bite, paying attention to your body's signals of hunger and fullness.
Yeah.
Ditch the distractions. So no TV, no phone while you're eating. And it's really a practice,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it's not a quick fix, but it can transform your relationship with food.
And I like that you brought up transforming your relationship with food because I think so often weight loss is approached from a place of like restriction and deprivation.
Certainly.
Tip number 7, stimulus and cue control. This one gets into the psychology behind it and how, sometimes our environments work against us.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it's all about how our environment influences our behavior.
Yeah.
Like, the article uses this example of a candy bowl on the counter. Just by seeing it, you might be triggered, even if you weren't hungry before.
Yeah, it's like, Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly.
And then there's also the mindless snacking while watching TV.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
how do we combat these things?
So I think awareness is the first step.
Right.
So once you can identify your triggers,
Mm-hmm.
you can start to create strategies to manage them. So that might mean keeping tempting foods out of sight,
Yeah,
or having a healthier alternative on hand
Right.
when the cravings strike.
that makes sense. All right, tip number 8, planning ahead. This is crucial, I think, for and anyone who's busy.
Absolutely. And this article gives tons of practical advice,
Mm-hmm.
like prepping your meals in advance,
Right.
having healthy snacks ready so you're not caught off guard when hunger strikes.
Mm-hmm.
It's really all about setting yourself up for success.
Yeah,
So whether it's finding a workout buddy or joining a support group,
Mm-hmm.
or even just sharing your goals with a close friend,
Mm-hmm.
having that connection can really make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. And finally, tip number 10, stay positive.
Ah, yes.
It might sound cliche,
Yeah.
but, I think it's true. You have to keep that
So important.
positive mindset.
I think it's all about how we reframe those setbacks.
Right.
Instead of viewing them as failures, what if we view them as opportunities for growth
Yeah.
and learning? And, the article talks about being kind to yourself
Mm-hmm.
and celebrating the small wins along the way.
I like that. And speaking of challenges, this article really goes above and beyond by having this whole section about, what if you're injured?
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Like, how do you stay on track with your weight loss goals?
Yeah, because that can derail even the most dedicated person.
Yeah.
So it's important to find alternative ways to stay active,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just chair exercises
Mm-hmm.
or gentle stretching.
Yeah. And they talk about, being realistic about your goals and expectations when
Right.
you're injured.
Adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay if you're not progressing as quickly as you would like to be.
Right.
So
Right.
I think the main takeaway here is, sustainable weight loss is about making gradual changes, healthy changes. It's
Yeah.
not about turning your whole life upside down.
Right. It's got to fit into your life.
Yeah. And they also go beyond just the tips.
And they talk about strategies for not just losing weight,
Mm.
but maintaining that weight loss.
Right. Because that's where people struggle.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I lost the weight, but how do I keep it off? So you
Yeah.
really got to make those healthy habits a part of your everyday life, not just a temporary thing.
Right. It's about the long game.
Yeah.
Now, you have a lot of experience in the nutrition and wellness space. What really stood out to you from this article? Like, what surprised you, or what would you want to add to the conversation?
Well, I think for me, what really stood out was the emphasis on the psychology of weight loss.
Oh, yeah.
It's-
Yeah, of course.
So if you're really struggling with your weight, it's always a good idea to consult with a healthcare professional.
Yeah. Find what works for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to give everything away,
Yeah.
but this article does have a great Q&A section.
Yeah, it's really good.
It covers stuff like, what to do if your weight fluctuates
Oh, no.
and how to stay motivated when you hit a plateau.
Which, let's be honest, we all hit plateaus.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah, and it even talks about weight loss after pregnancy.
Yeah, that's huge for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I think it's safe to say that this article is more than just a list of tips. It's really about building a healthier, happier, relationship with yourself, both physically and mentally.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
a holistic approach. It's about
Yep.
honoring your body
Mhm.
and embracing those gradual changes
Yeah.
that lead to lasting well-being.
Speaking of change, one thing that I noticed is the article didn't explicitly endorse any specific diets, like keto or intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, what do you do with that, right?
Yeah, where do you go from here?
I think it's smart that the article focuses on those foundational healthy habits.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of getting caught up in any one dietary trend,
Yeah.
it's more about understanding the principles
Mm-hmm.
of a balanced diet.
Right.
And then you can explore different approaches and see what works for you.
Yeah. So it's really it's empowering you to become your own expert
Yeah.
in a way.
Exactly.
Like,
It's about tuning in to your body,
yeah.
becoming mindful,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately taking ownership of your health.
Yeah. I like that a lot. Before we wrap up this section, I did want to touch on one thing that I thought was interesting. The article talks about the difference between losing weight and weight maintenance.
It's a big difference.
Yeah. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. So losing weight often involves a more structured approach. Like you might be cutting calories
Mm-hmm.
or increasing your exercise.
Mm-hmm.
But maintaining weight loss is about making those healthy habits a permanent part of your life.
Yeah. It's that shift, right?
Yeah.
From the diet mentality
Yeah.
to, long-term commitment.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance where you're nourishing your body,
Yeah.
enjoying your food, moving your body
Yeah.
without feeling restricted
Yeah.
or deprived.
And that takes time
It does.
and experimentation
Yeah,
and a lot of self-compassion
absolutely.
along the way.
Yeah. Now, before we move on to the final part, I wanted to circle back to the idea of self-awareness. I think that's a thread that runs throughout this whole article.
Yeah, it does.
From keeping a food diary to recognizing those environmental triggers to just paying attention to your body's signals.
Yeah.
It's all about becoming more in tune with yourself.
Yeah, I agree.
That's where the real transformation happens. It's not just about shedding pounds. It's about understanding ourselves
Yeah.
and our relationship with food and our bodies and our overall well-being.
So we're going to take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll be wrapping up this deep dive with some final thoughts and some actionable takeaways that you can apply to your own journey. So stay tuned. And we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive on these 10 tips for successful weight loss. I'm feeling super inspired. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. There's so much good stuff in here. And, it's really about
Of that type of lifestyle.
well, I think like the article says, it starts with those foundational pillars of nutrition, physical activity, and stress management. So it's really about finding that balance between nourishing your body with whole foods, moving your body in ways that feel good, and, managing those everyday stressors.
Yeah, that can lead to unhealthy habits.
Exactly.
Yeah, and, we talked about it earlier, but I think social support is such a big one, too.
Huge.
It can make all the difference.
Yeah, it's amazing how much stronger we are when we
Yeah.
have that support.
Yeah, definitely. Now, of those 10 tips, which ones do you think were the most impactful? Or, maybe even game changers for some people?
Well, I think eliminating liquid calories is a big one because people don't realize how many calories they're drinking.
Yeah, it's so easy to just, not even think about it.
Yeah, like those sugary drinks and fancy coffees.
Yeah.
Even some fruit juices can
Yeah.
really add up.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the mindful eating tip.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
We're all so busy, and it's so easy to just, shovel food in our mouths
We're not even thinking about it.
without even tasting it.
Yeah.
Mindful eating is really a game changer.
Yeah, I think so too. And, planning ahead. That's another one that can really make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you're busy.
Yeah, if you have healthy meals and snacks ready to go, you're less likely to
Yeah.
make those bad choices.
It's about setting yourself up for success.
Yeah.
So,
If you're listening to this and you're like, all right, I'm ready to take action, I would say pick one or two of these tips that resonate with you.
Yeah.
And just start incorporating them into your daily routine.
yeah, start small.
Yeah.
You don't have to do everything at once.
Right. Those small changes
Yeah,
can really add up over time.
absolutely.
What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone
Hmm.
who is just starting out on their weight loss journey?
I would say be patient. Weight loss isn't linear. There will be ups and downs, there will be plateaus, there will be setbacks. So just be kind to yourself. Embrace the journey. Celebrate the small wins.
Yeah.
And most importantly, learn to love and appreciate your body.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
And just keep moving forward one step at a time.
Love it.
So we've talked about a lot today,
We have.
but I want to leave you with one final thought. The 10 tips are great, but there's one element that I think we haven't explicitly addressed, and that's self-compassion.
So important.
Yeah.
Throughout this journey, you got to be kind to yourself. Weight loss can be an emotional roller coaster. There will be moments of frustration,
For sure.
self-doubt, maybe even guilt.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who is struggling with those negative feelings?
I would say you're not alone. Everyone feels that way sometimes. So just acknowledge those feelings, offer yourself compassion, and remember that every day is a fresh start.
I like that. And those negative thoughts
Yeah.
become really overwhelming. Don't hesitate to seek support from a therapist.
Or a counselor.
Yeah.
For sure.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about this idea of self-compassion. How can you be kinder to yourself throughout this process? How can you celebrate your wins, big or small? And how can you embrace those setbacks as opportunities for growth? I think those are some really important questions to ponder. as you continue on your journey to a healthier and happier you. And remember, you got this. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.